Please remember to give the video a thumbs up, share your insights in the comments section, and subscribe to keep up with our newest narratives. On that languid Tuesday afternoon, the house enveloped itself in an eerie stillness, as if it were pausing, suspended in time. Having just completed the final folds of laundry, I found myself pondering the indulgence of a second cup of coffee when the doorbell chimed unexpectedly. Surprise was etched on my face. I hadn't anticipated the arrival of anyone. I dried my hands on a kitchen towel, a blend of curiosity and annoyance swirling within me. Since my son departed, my home has settled into a gentle, solitary cadence. These days, visitors were a rarity, and surprises were even scarcer. I swung the door wide and for an instant time stood still around me. There he stood wearing that effortless, well-known smile, his eyes still glimmering with the charm of youth. Ryosuke, my son's closest companion from childhood. "Hello, Kaio," he said, a familiar boyish grin playing at the corners of his lips. As I navigated the roads of the area, a spontaneous urge compelled me to make a brief stop. "I trust this moment finds you well, equally balanced." It had been more than a decade since our paths last crossed. The most recent occasion he occupied a seat at my kitchen table. He was an awkward adolescent, his unruly hair framing a face filled with youthful exuberance, and a backpack brimming with video games slung over his shoulder. He now stood taller and broader, his once slender frame filled out with age and confidence. That voice, deeper and richer, still carried the playful lilt I remembered so well. Equally balanced. Oh my goodness gracious. I inhaled sharply, widening the door's embrace. Step inside. Behold yourself. Your transformation is remarkable." Our embrace was fleeting. With a warm demeanor and a polite air, he entered, his gaze sweeping the room, infused with both nostalgia and curiosity. The house remained largely the same, familiar furnishings. Identical images adorned the wall. Now the silence remained unbroken, devoid of the clatter of boys' feet or the incessant hum of video games. "I can hardly fathom how much time has passed," I remarked, gesturing for him to take a seat. "How do you fare? How is your family faring? What draws you to this place once more?" He wore a smile while perched at the edge of the couch, primarily focused on work. "Tomorrow I have a business meeting in the city. I decided to take a stroll down memory lane before the whirlwind begins." I brewed a robust cup of coffee, infused with a whisper of cinnamon, reminiscent of the times when the boys were gathered around. We gathered around the kitchen table, the very spot where they once tackled homework, or at least feigned engagement with it. He shared with me the story of his life in Seattle, his career in architecture, and the adventures he embarked upon during his travels. I listened, captivated, experiencing an unusual blend of pride and an elusive sensation, perhaps an ache, a deep yearning. Amidst the warmth of the second cup and the echoes of laughter over his clumsy attempt to juggle oranges, I found myself lost in thought, my gaze lingering longer than intended. He had shed the image of that clumsy boy with scraped knees and a lopsided grin. He had transformed into a man, exuding composure, deep thought, and an undeniable handsomeness. Took me by surprise. "Do you still recall that lamp?" He let out a soft chuckle, his fingers idly scratching the back of his neck. "I was under the impression that you would expel me from the house following that incident." "I ought to have," I jested, shaking my head. "Yet, you possessed an uncanny ability to weave your way out of precarious situations with charm." He gazed at me then, truly gazed. His gaze lingered on mine for a heartbeat longer than necessary, and warmth crept into my cheeks. I averted my eyes, preoccupying myself with arranging the cups. Will you be in town this evening? In truth, I have yet to unravel that mystery. I was contemplating the idea of reserving a hotel room following dinner. Don't be ridiculous, I exclaimed, the words tumbling out before I could catch them. You're welcome to remain here. The guest room is prepared, and here I am merely echoing through this expansive aged house. He paused, but just for an instant. If you are certain, I wouldn't want to intrude. You don't come across as imposing. Having someone nearby would be quite pleasant. While I prepared dinner, he stayed in the kitchen, eager to lend a hand. We glided around one another with a fluidity that took me by surprise, a type that emerges solely from the tapestry of history, woven with shared memories nestled in the nooks of every space. We gathered around the dining table, the gentle notes of a soft jazz playlist weaving through the air. The dialogue unfolded with a natural ease. We found ourselves lost in memories, laughter echoing around us, until almost unwittingly, we ventured into more profound depths. We spoke of those we had lost, the weight of our regrets, and the peculiar sorrow that accompanies aging, as if the finest moments of our lives had quietly faded away. I never shared this with you, he murmured, his gaze fixed on his plate, but you have always been something of a role model for me. I gazed at him, taken aback. You exuded warmth and strength. Your presence transformed this house into a true home. A sensation gripped my chest, leaving me uncertain whether it was gratitude, guilt, or a flutter of an emotion long forgotten. Thank you, I murmured gently. Its significance surpasses your understanding. The hours of darkness unfurled endlessly. The clock inched beyond 11, and our conversation flowed on, legs tucked beneath us on the couch, wine glasses cradled in our hands, the distance between us gradually diminishing. Then, silence enveloped the moment. A gentle, profound stillness. He gazed at me, his eyes soft and kind. May I pose a question to you? I nodded, a sense of uncertainty washing over me as I braced for what lay ahead. Have you ever experienced that sensation of having overlooked an opportunity? A little something crafted just for you? I blinked, taken by surprise. Constantly, I murmured. Yet, life seldom inquires about our desires, does it? He inclined his head, his eyes remaining fixed on mine. Perhaps on occasion. Indeed it does. The atmosphere became dense with feeling, laden with an unarticulated truth that was palpably present. A gentle tug, an intriguing prospect. In that instant, I became aware that a transformation had taken place. A threshold breached not through speech or contact, but through a mere glance, a collective reality, a call to awaken emotions once more. An unforeseen occurrence, a profound essence of humanity. That night slumber eluded me. I reclined in bed, gazing at the ceiling, my mind swirling with thoughts in a manner it hadn't in years. The house lay in stillness, yet the hush had lost its sense of comfort. It was electric, reminiscent of the atmosphere just prior to a summer tempest. Even occupied the guest room just across the hallway, the very room that once belonged to my mother, the very bed where my son's friends would often collapse after marathon gaming sessions. Yet, on this occasion, the essence within that room was no longer that of a boy. A man stood there, and for reasons I had yet to fully unravel, that held significance. I attempted to convince myself that it was insignificant, merely a longtime companion stopping by, merely reconnecting with the flow of things. Yet, beneath the surface, an undeniable shift had taken place this evening. A glance, query, an unexpected shared vulnerability that had unlocked a door for both of us. The following morning, I prepared breakfast as a matter of routine. Fluffy scrambled eggs, golden toast, and a steaming cup of coffee. Yet I progressed at a more deliberate pace, acutely attuned to my surroundings. The floorboards creaked softly, the light filtered through the curtains at an angle, and the refrigerator emitted a gentle hum. All sensations seemed to burst with intensity. He descended, clad in a simple gray t-shirt and comfortable sweatpants, with bare feet and hair tousled from slumber. There was an undeniable charm in witnessing him in that state. At ease, open-hearted, recognizable, yet refreshing. "Morning," he murmured, a sleepy smile gracing his lips. "A delightful aroma fills the air." "Morning," I replied, my attention returning to the stove. "Eggs reminiscent of Kopu, only if accompanied by a side of cinnamon coffee," he playfully remarked. A gentle laugh escaped my lips. "Ah, how fortunate you are." We dined in a comfortable hush for a time, the gentle clink of forks against plates the sole accompaniment to our shared moment. Yet the silence held a certain comfort. The silence enveloped them, a comfortable stillness that blossomed between those who share a deep sense of trust. Following breakfast, we found ourselves seated on the back porch. This year, the garden burst into bloom ahead of schedule. Tulips and daffodils swayed softly in the spring breeze, while the trees began to don their verdant attire once more. He reclined in the chair, cradling his coffee, his gaze sweeping over the yard. "Do you still tend to the garden?" Each year I acquiesced with a nod. "It seems to be a form of therapy, perhaps." "It is a sight to behold, serene and tranquil." We lingered in silence, the weight of our presence filling the space between us. It was a peculiar yet delightful sensation to have someone by my side, to savor this small slice of morning in silence, without the need to fill it with sound. He suddenly revealed that he had nearly tied the knot a few years back. I glanced in his direction. "Is that so?" Indeed. She was known as Marissa. Our time together spanned 3 years. It concluded with a hushed stillness. There were no grand confrontations, merely an awakening to the fact that our desires diverged. A moment of stillness hung in the air. I lingered in anticipation. Deep within, I sensed that I wasn't presenting myself as I ought to have. A void lingered in the air, not from her but from me. I nodded with deliberation, taking in the weight of his words. At times, we remain unaware of our own deficiencies until another holds up a mirror to our existence. He gazed at me then, truly gazed, and I experienced it once more, that irresistible pull. Beyond mere attraction lies a profound connection, a depth of understanding, and a sense of recognition. "You've changed," he murmured softly. "In what way?" "You appear more gentle, serene, yet undeniably resilient, as if you have reconciled with something profound." I pondered that notion. Perhaps I have, or perhaps I've simply ceased the charade of being someone I am not. A gentle breeze stirred, delicately sweeping a strand of hair across my face. He extended his hand with a natural grace, gently tucking it behind my ear. His fingers hovered for a heartbeat longer than required. My heart faltered. "I ought to take a walk," I declared, rising a touch too abruptly. "Breathe in the fresh air." He rose as well. "Would you mind if I joined you?" As we strolled together along the serene streets of the neighborhood, each porch adorned with a gentle wind chime and every yard whispering its own tale. As we strolled, our conversation meandered through a tapestry of topics, touching on everything and yet somehow nothing at all. Beloved tomes, cherished recollections, melodies we had both long since overlooked and adored. The dialogue flowed effortlessly, shifting between the playful and the profound, reminiscent of a familiar waltz. At long last, we found ourselves at the tranquil lake on the outskirts of town. The scene was serene, the surface smooth as glass, mirroring the soft blue expanse of the sky overhead. We lingered at the precipice, a shared silence enveloping us. "I used to visit this place with your son," he remarked. "We would toss stones across the water's surface, engaging in conversations about the future and the lives we would lead as we grew older. And now you stand before me," I murmured gently, "a bit older." He faced me, his features a mask of ambiguity. "And you remain here, still you." I chuckled, though the sound escaped me with an unexpected lightness. "What is the significance of that?" "It suggests, perhaps, that I never truly perceived you until this moment." That struck me deeply. A gentle flutter, soft and warm. "You were always the cool mom," he said, "but now you've become something even greater. You exist in your entirety, and perhaps at last I've matured enough to truly value that." Words eluded me. The breeze stirred gently, wafting the fragrant essence of spring and the coolness of lake water through the air. I gazed across the lake, allowing the moment to linger in the air. As I glanced over my shoulder, I found him still observing me intently. "Even," I began, but he gently interrupted. "I have no intention of complicating matters. I felt it was important to share my current perspective of you. I harbor no expectations, I simply sensed it." His candor caught me off guard. In that moment, there existed a serene absence of pressure and expectation, replaced instead by a profound sense of openness. And something within me fractured as well, softly, akin to the initial bloom of a flower that remains unaware of its own blossoming. I too whispered softly, "See you." We strolled back at a leisurely pace, our shoulders grazing against each other from time to time. A change had occurred once more, and this time, neither of us made an effort to overlook it. On that evening we gathered by the fireplace, the gentle light casting a golden hue upon our faces. Our words were few, yet the silence between us resonated with unspoken emotions, a shared understanding lingering in the air. As the hour for slumber approached, we found ourselves in the hallway, suspended in that slender expanse between two doors. "Good night," he murmured gently. "Sleep well, Ifin." He extended his hand, brushing against mine with a delicate caress, a mere whisper of contact. It was a fleeting presence, yet it remained, echoing in the silence long after he had vanished into the guest room. And I found myself standing there, solitary in the hallway, my heart brimming with questions I no longer feared to voice. For the first time in ages, I experienced a profound sense of vitality. The next morning, an oppressive weight seemed to envelop the house. Perhaps it was I who was at fault. Perhaps it was the burden of realization, the understanding that an unspoken change had subtly occurred between us. I navigated the kitchen with an unusual slowness, acutely aware of the lingering silence from the night before. The distance between Ifin's door and mine seemed both fleeting and expansive in a way I had never experienced before. I reminded myself to refrain from overanalyzing the situation, yet I did. He descended, clad for the day in jeans and a button-down shirt, the sleeves casually rolled up. He appeared relaxed yet keen, reminiscent of a person who had finally discovered his true self. "Did you rest well?" I inquired, my gaze lifting from the sizzling pan. He smiled, surpassing my expectations. We gathered for breakfast once more, as if it were a cherished ritual, as though we had been doing it for ages. The dialogue floated effortlessly across topics such as his meeting that afternoon, the weather, and the garden. Yet beneath the surface I sensed an undercurrent, a new energy that neither of us dared to label just yet. As he gathered his belongings following breakfast, readying himself for the journey to his meeting in the city, an unfamiliar ache settled in my chest. It was not love. Not yet, but it held a certain weight, and I found myself unprepared for its conclusion. "Will you return this evening?" I inquired, attempting to maintain a nonchalant tone. He halted for a moment, casting a glance in my direction. "Should the invitation remain open?" "Indeed it does. In that case, I would be delighted to." In that moment, the day unfurled before me, brimming with the anticipation of something greater. The afternoon slipped away as I engaged in the act of cleaning, not out of necessity for the house, but rather as a means to occupy my restless hands. I replaced the guest sheets, fluffed the pillows, though I doubted he would notice, and then meandered outside to the garden. With my fingers immersed in the earth, I nestled a handful of vibrant herbs into their new home. The earth exuded warmth, a gentle moisture enveloping it, providing a sense of grounding. Yet even in that serene stillness, where leaves whispered and birds sang, his essence lingered, as if it had woven itself into the very fabric of the home. As the sun started its descent and the shadows stretched out, I retreated indoors, cleansing the earth from my hands, and slipped into something gentler, something more inviting. I exist. I reassured myself that it was not a date. I reassured myself that my actions were merely a matter of courtesy. Yet, beneath the surface, I was aware of the truth. Upon his arrival, he carried with him a bottle of dry red wine and a delicate bouquet of wildflowers, likely gathered during his journey. He said, grinning for the hostess. I embraced them. A truly heartwarming experience. "You needn't have done that." I had the desire to. The evening meal was unpretentious. Succulent roasted chicken accompanied by tender asparagus and fluffy rice. Yet there was an undeniable sense of uniqueness about it. Our dialogue flowed more freely than the food on our plates, effortlessly drifting into profound depths once more. As the wine dwindled, a hush fell over the night. With sleeves rolled up and hands immersed in soapy water, he assisted me in washing the dishes, laughter bubbling up as he inadvertently splashed water onto my shirt. I flung a towel in his direction. He grasped it, his fingers grazing against mine. The laughter gradually diminished, giving way to a soft stillness. "May I pose a question to you?" He spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I inclined my head in agreement. "Have you ever contemplated the idea of beginning anew? Not returning, but embarking on a fresh journey?" I swallowed hard. The inquiry struck a sensitive chord within me, at times. Yet, the prospect of beginning anew evokes a sense of trepidation. I feel as though I have missed the opportunity. "I don't believe the window ever truly closes," he remarked, locking eyes with me. "We simply overlook its persistent presence." We lingered in that moment, our gazes entwined beneath the soft glow of the kitchen light, while everything else slipped away into oblivion. In that instant, I realized it transcended mere nostalgia, surpassing the depths of loneliness. This marked the reunion of two individuals, reconnected in an unexpected manner. He advanced with measured intent. I chose to stay put. His hand rose, hesitant initially, then firm, gliding softly across my cheek, tucking a stray lock of hair behind my ear. The familiar gesture returned, yet this time it held a lingering quality. "I never intended for this to unfold," he murmured gently. "Yet you linger in my thoughts, an unshakable presence." I shut my eyes, allowing the moment to envelop me like a gentle, soothing rain. I've been making an effort to suppress it, yet it lingers within me. The silence spoke volumes, conveying all that needed to be understood. He hasn't kissed me, not just yet. He took a small step back, creating distance, not from uncertainty but from a place of respect. I don't want to rush this, he said. And I don't want you to ever question whether it was merely a fleeting moment. I inclined my head in agreement. I feel the same way. We transitioned to the licking room, where the fire crackled softly once more. We lingered beside one another, the warmth of our proximity palpable, yet maintaining a distinct boundary that separated our worlds. That line, slender and fragile, throbbed between us as if it were a heartbeat. He extended his hand, placing it softly over mine. Neither a gesture nor an assertion, merely a bond. We lingered in that moment, enveloped in silence, as the flickering firelight wove its magic upon the walls. At last he rose to his feet. "I should turn in," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Very well," I responded, feeling an unexpected dryness in my throat. He cast a final glance my way, a gaze heavy with the weight of all the unsaid words that lingered in the air, before vanishing down the corridor. I lingered in that moment, my hand still buzzing from his touch, my heart brimming with an emotion I hadn't experienced in ages, neither infatuation nor mere fantasy, but a profound sense of hope. For the first time in years, it felt safe to embrace it. As dawn approached, I found myself awake, long before the sun had a chance to cast its first light through the curtains. The house was enveloped in silence once more. Yet this time, an unmistakable shift lingered in the air. Not lonely, merely tranquil, content. I lingered at the edge of my bed, taking a moment to collect my thoughts. The occurrences of the past 2 days hovered in the air like the lingering aroma of aged perfume, subtle yet unmistakably there. I could still sense his hand resting on mine, the intensity of his gaze when he regarded me as more than a mere figure from his past, but as someone of significance in the present. Descending the stairs without shoes, I felt the chill of the wooden floor against my soles as I began the ritual of brewing coffee. To my surprise, Ryosuke was already at the kitchen table, scrolling through something on his phone. He wore that familiar soft gray t-shirt and a quiet smile. "Good morning," I spoke softly. He lifted his gaze, and a broader smile spread across his face. "Good morning." There existed neither awkwardness nor tension. Instead, a serene intimacy enveloped us, creating the sensation that we had already ventured into uncharted territory, even if the words to express it remained unspoken. I offered him a steaming cup of coffee and settled into the chair opposite him. We lingered in quietude, allowing the warmth to seep into our very cores. "You know," he said finally, "I've been reflecting quite a bit on last night." I confess I did as well. He placed his cup on the table and leaned in a bit, his gaze earnest. "I truly meant every word I spoke. I seek permanence, not fleeting moments. I never returned with expectations, yet now that this moment has arrived, I find myself unwilling to turn away from it. The part of me that had become accustomed to solitude, that had persuaded itself I was beyond the age of potential, yearned to push back. Yet the other aspect, the more subdued and sagacious one, merely inclined its head in agreement. I find myself at a crossroads, uncertain of what this is, hesitant to label it just yet. Yet there's an undeniable authenticity to it, a rarity that compels me to embrace rather than flee." His hand grasped mine once more, this time with a serene assurance. In that moment, time seemed to stand still, enveloped in a quiet recognition that a new chapter was unfolding. The remainder of the morning was devoted to wandering through the garden. He assisted me in pruning the winter branches and inquired about the flowers I had cultivated. We navigated our connection like familiar companions embracing a fresh cadence, two souls uncovering one another not as we once were, but as we had become in the present moment. As the afternoon waned and he prepared to return to the city, a lightness enveloped us, filled only with warmth and the anticipation of what was yet to come. "I would like to return," he remarked, lingering at the threshold. "I suggest you do," I said with a smile. "I have my garden plans all set, and I'll require someone with a bit of height to access the top shelves." He let out a soft chuckle, but soon fell into a contemplative silence. "I'm truly glad I decided to come," he remarked. "I find myself in the same position." He leaned in and kissed me softly, with a tenderness that spoke of sincerity rather than bravado, and I allowed myself to embrace it fully. As he drove off, I lingered by the window, observing the swirling dust that his car had cast into the air. Yet I felt no sorrow, for I understood that this was not a farewell. It marked the dawn of an unwritten chapter, one I had never envisioned putting into words. As I pivoted from the window and returned to the kitchen, a sensation unfurled within me. More than mere hope, it was the serene delight of rediscovery. It was the realization that life still held the power to astonish, that love could still make its entrance, not with grand gestures and proclamations, but softly, unexpectedly, akin to a gentle knock at the door from someone you believed had faded into the past. At times, that is precisely what we require the most.